Lawyers of Reddit, what is the most ridiculous case that you've appeared in court for? A divorced couple went to mediation to decide if it was appropriate to euthanize a 12-year-old Yorkie that was dying. It took 3 hours and nothing was decided. We discussed things like dignity of death, expected quality of life, and loss of consortium and companionship. We did not come to a decision and the dog died 2 days later. Not a lawyer, but had a friend who was involved in a pretty stupid case. He and I worked at a very popular computer parts retailer together. Once a week we would have stock night where closing shift employees would stay late and restock the shelves with the shipment that had arrived that morning. During this time, most employees would listen to music or something while they worked. In this instance, my friend's headphones had broken, so he grabbed a new set off the shelf, tossed the packaging in his locker, and finished his shift. Once it was time to leave, he threw the headphones in his locker with the packaging and went home. He had an opening shift the following morning, so once the registers opened, he grabbed the headphones and paid for them before tossing them back in his locker. Later that day, one of the supervisors, who was a total bitch, told the store manager about it, leaving out the details that he had left the headphones in the store overnight, and had paid for them the following morning. Store manager called the police and had him arrested on the spot for theft. Got legal involved and they pressed charges. It went to court and was thrown out pretty quickly since the headphones had never left the store, and there was no company policy against employees using products while working. Friend countersued then settled out of court. They basically ended up paying for his college degree and offering his job back, to which he politely declined. I'm not a lawyer, but I can't not share this story. Years ago, I worked for a garbage company. It was on a rainy Saturday and I was going to the dump. Up ahead I see all kinds of police cars and road flares. Turns out one of my buddies working for the company was also going to the dump and lost his brakes going down a hill. He hit the intersection just as the light turned red against him, so he entered the intersection with his garbage truck going about 50 miles per hour. He plowed through 8 cars before coming to rest on top of a relatively brand new Toyota. Fortunately, the guy driving the Toyota wasn't even scratched. His seat broke and he lay flat in his seat with the front wheel of the truck inches from his face. It was a miracle he lived. He didn't sue. The 8 cars Bobby hit didn't sue, but one lady who witnessed the accident sued both the company and Bobby personally, claiming she was so traumatized by the event that it affected her sex life. Whenever she went to have relations with her husband, she couldn't go through with it. She claimed all she saw when her husband tried to have intercourse was a big garbage truck bearing down on her. The judge threw it out and told her she was ridiculous. I wasn't the lawyer on this case, but I was interning for him and went to the trial. The client pleaded not guilty to the charge of burglary, despite my boss's advice. How was he caught? After stealing all of $90 from the house, he ran out, but dropped his wallet, with his ID and social security card inside. Jury did not believe his "it wasn't me" defense. Got 40 years because of priors, prosecutor offered him 10. Listen to your attorney's advice, criminals. Not a lawyer, I was sued for backing into a car in a parking lot going about 4 miles an hour. Here's where it gets good. I was sued 4 years after it happened, and when they came to court there were 4 of them despite being only 2 people in the car at the time of the accident. 3 out of 4 were wearing neck braces. The doctor they had seen and that testifying on their behalf was previously sued and had lost his license to practice medicine in the past. Their attorney put me on the stand and attacked me viciously, but she was wildly inaccurate and I didn't have anything to hide. The jury was so disgusted by the end of the trial that they awarded no damages and made them pay their own legal bills, which I'm sure were extensive because it ain't cheap getting a doctor who will lie for you. Didn't go to court with this. The legal aid clinic I was at declined to take this guy's case. He was a roofer that got electrocuted when his ladder came into contact with a power line. Note, giving estimates on measurements, I recall the relationships, but not specifics. City code mandated that lines be 10 away from houses, and in this case the line was 12 away. But according to him, sometimes wind made the line sway and the swaying part came inside of 10. Hence negligence. Roofer in question was unlicensed for any sort of construction work. At the time he was wearing flip-flops and wasn't wearing any sort of safety gear. He was using a ladder to get on top of a garage, and then pulling up his ladder to reach a higher portion of the house. While swinging his ladder around on top of the roof it came into contact with the line. He wanted money for his injuries. In addition to the electric burns he also had concussion and cracked orbital from the fall, money for the work missed while healing, and money for the MP3 player destroyed by the shock. The MP3 player stood out. I had a lawyer try to collect from me because his basement level HVAC closet, basement, was flooding, and my unit WSS on the top floor, 4 levels. Owner had 2 HVAC guys come out to look in my HVAC closet. Nothing wrong with my unit. Asked for a written copy of the receipt, and it was written right there on both of the receipts. Common drain pipe clogged. HOA notified. Every unit between his unit and mine, as well as the neighbors on one side, 8 units total, used that pipe. Upon asking him his intentions, and reminding him the HOA owns the common drain pipes, as his paid professionals wrote down, he refused to answer me. Turns out the owner that hired the lawyer was on the HOA board. Was on jury duty. A guy was in court for a trash violation. His yard was a little decrepit and full of junk. I forget what the actual charge was. The guy chose not to have a lawyer. We spent 3 days listening to the man talk about how each and everything in the yard had a purpose and was not technically junk. On the last day, the guy noticed that the police officer had walked into his backyard to take most of the pictures being used as evidence. The judge threw the guy a bone, declared that all of the evidence was illegally obtained, and pretty much ordered us to let him off. Here's the kicker. One of the members of the jury actually lived down the street from the guy. He tried to argue for a minute or two that it was still technically trash and we should convict him. We all looked at him with daggers in our eyes. He gave in pretty quick. Found him not guilty within 5 minutes. But hey, at least I made $40 for 3 days of my life. Parking ticket in Baltimore. Had the meter maid describe the car and circumstances of the allegedly illegally parked car. Then presented the registration showing it was in fact a motorcycle. Case dismissed. Had an indigent client who was 82 years old accused of malicious mischief and criminal trespass. Clients lived through the Great Depression, World War II, civil rights movement etc. She has no criminal history. PA wanted a day in jail and $1,000 in fines and costs. Turns out the incident was from a property dispute with a neighbor who had taken several of her concrete blocks. Had to reach out to PA's supervisor to more or less get the case dismissed. Moral of the story is prosecutors wield absurd amounts of power. Guy got a divorce in secret by telling the court his wife had left the country when she basically lived down the street. When she discovered this and appealed the divorce, the judge took his side for some reason and had no problem with his lying. I was in complete shock. When I pointed out to the judge that this was legally problematic, his exact words to me were, "I don't care what the law says. I just checked, he's still somehow a judge." I had a similar judge in Botetourt County, VA. My ex-wife held on to 5 years of medical bills for my daughter, and instead of just giving them to me so I can reimburse her, she took me directly to court. The first go-round we came to the agreement the total was $1,200. Since she held on to the bills for so long, the judge gave me 6 months to pay the $1,200 to her. I did before the 6 months was over and in fact, paid her around $1,300. The second go-round she told the judge, different judge, I still owed her $50 of it. I had receipts of payment for all $1,300 I paid her, and the judge flat out said it doesn't matter to me 4 different times and ordered me to pay her the extra $50 she wanted.